Welcome, everybody, to another Crypto Mondays collective call for today, March 28th. We have a special guest with us, Stefan from Truflation, who's going to tell us how they're actually keeping it real for the governments of the world and how they track things. But first, we just have a few things to go through for the call. We have the new website up. I think everybody probably knows that by now, and we are working on increasing the content on that. We have the DIA, which is growing strong for the Decentralized AI Agent Alliance. That is helping out to bring a lot of companies together. We have about 54 or 56 now founding members of it. This is already behind a little bit. I think we've got about 50 here, and we'll be adding some more this week. We have the subgroups of DIA, and a lot of subgroup meetings took place this week. I had the honor of being in the data ownership, and we're looking at creating content, putting reports out for DIA about data ownership and about the state of AI agents. And we're working on Monday, our own community building agent. We've got a prototype up for a dashboard for that, and we're going through that to be able to create new abilities for it. We'll be putting that out to the community to be able to give us some feedback on it. So keep an eye out for that. New Crypto Monday chapters, go through these pretty quickly here. I got 6 new ones that are recent that are just coming up soon. And I'll skip that for right now. And I would like to hand it over to Stefan, founder and CEO of Truflation. I'm sure he's got some very interesting content to go over, especially with today's US inflation numbers coming out. And we'd like to find out about that. I'm going to stop presenting, so Stefan can.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Alan. Hi, everybody. I think I gave a presentation. When was it? Maybe nearly over a year ago. It feels like
Yes.
about a year ago. Yeah, that was just before our TGE. We've gone through quite a lot since then, built out our product significantly, and yeah, are getting more and more recognition. This is ultimately what we have today. And you can see we cover 4 nations right now. We've extended into the UK, which we already had, but we never had Argentina. We work very closely with.
Stefan, I'm
Yep.
sorry, you got your whole desktop up there. If you could just do that window.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good
Not sure you
thing.
want everybody looking at your desktop.
No, I don't. How do I get a window? Application window.
Yeah,
Yeah, here
that'll
we go. Okay,
do it for
perfect.
you.
Sorry, guys. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, so here,
Looks good.
um, yeah, I mean, you can see we've covered Argentina. We were invited by Milei in October last year to go and present at his tech forum. So we'd been working with his government to get the Argentinian data up there, and now we track Argentinian inflation together with the government, which is a big contrast to what we're doing in the US. We have put letters in to Doge to request to do inflation together with the government and use our decentralized database to be able to provide all of this data. Yeah, I mean, if we go into the US, we are ahead of the current environment. We're about a 45-day lead time to where the government is. If you go back since 2000, we had 2020, we have about a 26.7% inflation rate aggregate, which means that today a dollar, what you could buy with a dollar back then, today you can only get that same amount using 75 cents. So the purchasing power of goods that you can get for the same amount of products is 75 cents. So you're losing value over time, and that's really come out. But more importantly, I think, just where have we come and where are we going? I just have a bit of a presentation here that we sort of share with, oh, I need to log in. But anyway, with our clients, I'm not used to this format. There you go. Yeah, so truthful data for transparent economy. We now aggregate 100 different data sources for working with about 100 million items. We do it 30 times faster. Those are all the sort of states that I think we've shared. Why did we set this up? Most of you will know we set this up because we didn't believe the government. It's transitory. And the funny thing is, guess what? On the last FOMC meeting, Jerome Powell goes up, it's transitory inflation again, right? And so we just can't believe that. And so we decided to go down a different path, and that has reinforced what we're doing even more so. We have 12 categories versus the 6 categories that governments have. And we have different weightings for each of these categories for each of the countries. So the UK, the US, Argentina, and India each have a different weighting for any of these categories, but the 12 categories stay the same. Here you can see the 4 different indexes across the different countries that we have, the data sources that we pull together from 100 different parties, some big names, licensed aggregators, but then also more retail names that we're familiar with, like Trulia for real estate, McDonald's for the Big Mac prices, Gas Buddy, Chrono 28 for the price of your Rolex watches. We pull in prediction market data, etc. So all of this is just continuing to grow as we build this out. But what we found and what customers like about our data sets that we have now, and by the way, we also just pulled in a whole bunch of weather data that is more accurate than government weather data. Why is weather so important? Ultimately, because you're seeing a lot of commodity prices be tied to changes of weather. So futures contracts are tied to weather. So we're actually crowdsourcing that weather data around the world, starting off in 4 major cities to test it out. But yeah, here, what people like about our data is that we do it in real time. We have generally found that our data is leading that of the government by 45 days on average. And our prediction capability is, so if you just take Truflation and compare it to that of the BLS, you're going to be 45 days ahead. So you'll see big shifts from down up 45 days ahead of time. And what does that mean? So if you look here on our year-to-year aggregate, you can see down here there was a big shift taking place. We dropped significantly on around March 1, and then we start picking up again on March 12. And you can see the government numbers have slowly come down. Last announcement on mid-March was that it dropped to 2.8%, and we were spot on with that calculation. And so we think the government is going to announce another drop because, again, they're 45 days behind, and when they announce next will be mid-April, and that is still 45 days ahead since the last reporting, which was our reporting at least, which was March 1 or February 28th. Yeah, but that's what a large portion of our traditional finance customers are looking to. They want to be able to see Truflation as it relates to the BLS and do that constant contrast. And they then want us to get more precise around what will the government be announcing when they come out with the number. Why is that so important to them? Because there are $5.5 trillion worth of bonds that are tied to that government metric. And so they are trading against that. Oil, Dixie, the yield, the bonds themselves, and gold. So those are all ultimate investment grade assets that are highly correlated to that of the BLS number or inflation. Um, and so what we have to do every single month for those clients is calibrate and slow down our numbers so that we can match the numbers of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. We now have this down to an art of, a sort of a 99.94% accuracy, where we can actually pretty accurately predict by slowing down certain metrics, extracting or retracting metrics from our 12 categories to the government 6 categories alone. Yeah, and that's largely what the customers are like. The other thing is, now that we've been around for over yeah, how long have we been around? I don't know, a long time. So 4 years. We also have some history. This is way too zoomed in, zoom out. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see my screen, but hopefully you can. We've identified sort of 3 big patterns. One is we are trending and see big trends and shifts on the 10-year bond yield. We equally see shifts in the Dixie. The Dixie is the US dollar against a basket of other currencies. And we see a leading indicator for the price of Bitcoin. So when we floored at the bottom, we saw Bitcoin pick up, and we think that this will continue to grow and pick up going forward as well. But every time Truflation bottoms, the Bitcoin picks up. And we just posted a blog around this, and anybody can have a look and see how we calculate this, how you can use the data to then try and help predict where Bitcoin could be going. But more importantly, if you come to our site, a lot of people are asking us, is this immutable? How can I see this? Can I build assets around this? What can I do with this? So we have since put all of this on the blockchain. We've built a blockchain called the Truth Network. The Truth Network is an SQL blockchain. It is written in SQL, which is 80% of worldwide databases are written in SQL. And we have the SQL smart contract, which allows people to tack into those verified data sets and then be able to build calculations off that, e.g., write indexes, which are all, again, verified and computed by this decentralized network of 20 node operators maintaining this database across their nodes. And they have the Roadrunner consensus algorithm, which confirms and verifies the data within a second. So you can now go, I can see the Truflation index. I can go on chain. This is like you experience when you've got an ether scan, a base scan. You can now experience the Truflation index here. You can see what is in there. The components are exactly the same as the 12 components that you see on the Truflation website. And in fact, Truflation website is reading this from here. You can then go into food category. I can see the 2 different categories that you also see on the Truflation.com website. And again, you can see who the deployer is. So who published this? What's the geography it's relevant to? How are the tags? So you can just see certain information associated with that. And then I can go into food at home. And then I go all of a sudden into primitive asset classes. So we have primitive data sets and we have composed data sets. So composed data sets will mean multiple elements are embedded in there, and this is a single element. So into the Yahoo Foods category, you have all the futures prices blended in there from cocoa, coffee, cattle, etc. But more importantly, back here, you can then see all the different food categories, the source, and then you can verify each of the components in here. Yeah, so we try to make this super transparent, immutable, and traceable for everybody to see. And then ultimately, if you want to embed this, so customers are now subscribing to the Truth Network. They're building applications off the Truth Network. Those applications are, for example, Nuon, which is a flat coin, a yield-bearing stablecoin that is just launched on Base and is yeah, and they are guaranteeing inflation protection to their stablecoin holders and then providing surplus yield to the participants as that yield is generated either by yield aggregation or from the reserve. The reserve consists of tokenized oil, gold, silver, Bitcoin, SP 500, etc. Yeah, and so that is being developed. And they can just come here, they come and get the US Truflation code, they can then copy this, all of the script is here, they embed that into their application, and then you can go to their website and see what they have up there. Oops, yeah, you can then come here and then I can go to nuon.fi and you can see they have Truflation APY 1.68%, which they provide, and then they have a whole set of other APYs that they offer in rewards, in their other stablecoin rewards that they generate, and then they get their governance token, which makes up the bulk of it, which is why they are at 1,400%. But yeah, this is, and
Quick
here they
question
use
here.
Truflation. Yep.
Just I found the one for the Truflation Argentina inflation index. Do
Yep.
you have other pages there, or is that the only one you have right yet?
No, we have Argentina, we have India. You can see here we've got the India index. We launched this, I think, in November last year or early this year, together with India. But India has been a real challenge to get reliable, consistent data feeds. So we have a partner in India that we're working with to be able to capture that.
Okay, yep, I just found them. I had to search a little bit for it, but I got it.
But the most popular right now is the US, and then I'd say it's UK, and then Argentina, and then India.
Okay. And are you doing anything special for all these crypto strategic reserves that US government is talking about?
We're not doing anything for them. We have we have suggested, that we work with the government to put all of the data onto the Explorer, so it's fully transparent. The calculations can be on here. Again, fully transparent for anybody to see. But that has not yet happened. We talked to the BLS, yeah, I mean, over nearly 2 years ago, and they just really, I mean, yeah, it didn't go anywhere. But since the new administration has taken over, we have written a number of open letters. I think we are, yeah, they know who we are. Let's put it like that. We have not, I think we're not quite a high priority right now. I think they've got other fish to fry and, or bigger fish to fry. And then maybe at some point we hope to be able to, yeah, make a change and provide a very cost-effective service.
Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It just
No. No, that's it. But I think one of the things is, I mean, all of this was built out of what we needed to be able to aggregate and calculate inflation. And so that sort of led us to just build out all these data sets. And with the objective of making sure it's decentralized, it's transparent, and it's visible to everybody. Yeah, Dara, I mean, you have a question or just,
Yeah, I do. Great to see you, Stefan. This is absolutely still my very favorite crypto project. So I actually have a couple questions. First, you talked about nuance. I'm really glad to see that now becoming, getting out there mainstream. How would you compare nuance to tips when talking to, let's say, a financial advisor?
yeah, very, very, very accurate. I mean, I would say it's a digital version of tips. And actually better than tips because all tips does is give you the yield associated with inflation or protect your yield against inflation. And what Nuon does, it gives you minimum inflation. So you always are protected against, inflation all the time and true inflation, not just BLS inflation. And then when the
BS
product
inflation.
when the protocol generates surplus yield, it then passes that on to the users as well. And so you can see how they generate the yield here. They're working to they're basically a yield aggregator. They want to be the safest and easiest way to aggregate yield across DeFi.
And for advisors, where could their clients go and purchase Nuon?
They can, yeah, you can just super easy. You can come right here, deposit your USDC, and you'll get Nuon.
I think this is really interesting that I think,
And it's, yeah.
yeah, I think advisors are going to want to look at this as a comparison to tips. I think it could be really interesting. And
Yeah,
then
I don't have a wallet on this computer because yeah, we just had an experience, so I'm not going to do that again. But yeah, generally I don't have a wallet on this computer, but you can just easily deposit your dollar and then you get a new one. Right now it's on a guarded launch, so they're working, but this is opening up I think next week where they'll then allow anybody to deposit a dollar. So you can just test it out with a dollar versus having to test it out with $1,000.
really interesting.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on, are you doing anything or moving into the direction? I mean, I know you guys have been really so on the forefront of inflation, but looking at the employment numbers and the revisions lately, I mean, there have been such a big gap. Are you doing anything in that area?
Yeah, so Oliver and the team are focused heavily on PCE right now. We want to be able to report an accurate number associated with PCE. Employment numbers and GDP numbers are
Hmm,
also something we want to tackle. And that's in forecast and on the roadmap for this year.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And what about like anything with consumer sentiment?
Yeah, we have a sentiment calculator. We capture sort of real-time social media sentiment, and we convert that into an index that we have not yet deployed, but is pretty battle tested. And yeah, I don't know when they'll deploy that, but that's pretty much ready. We've been working on that since last summer. And obviously AI has been extremely helpful to allow us to then capture and immediately, yeah, infer the sentiment of the users. But we are trying to bring that out in a consistent fashion, and document that methodology really well, because I think that will definitely get a lot of criticism. And because if you're using Twitter, you're going to get one tone of voice. If you're using Threads, you're going to get another one. On Facebook, you're going to get another one. On Reddit, you're going to get a whole different angle. And so, how do you blend those together and weight those? I think the team have been trying to yeah, look at that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm actually writing an article on this now, and the media is like having a field day with the Michigan survey that came out,
Yeah.
which, and I don't know if it's bullshit or not. I think it's bullshit.
It definitely. We think that what people say is one thing, what people think is another thing, but what
Mm,
people feel is a whole different ball game. And what we need to capture is what people feel and how do we capture that? Yeah.
fascinating.
On the GDP calculation,
Yeah.
is there like a stratification around GDP from government spending versus GDP from private spending? Because that would be something that like they're very specifically like you can spend $1 billion paying government workers to push papers around, right? And that is technically GDP spending. You can the whole like digging a hole and filling it back up again, and you increase the GDP. But like it'd be interesting to see how that stratifies in between.
Yeah, we've been trying to look at it more from a business perspective or productivity perspective, where not necessarily looking at the amount of government spending, government employment, unless it's actually attributable to it's been handed out to a business, that business has deployed, it's allocated X number into investments. How many new businesses have been created? And then correlate that with job opportunities. So it's quite a complex beast.
This would be really interesting
And
information for Doge in general,
yeah,
Mm.
because Doge is, cutting away from that, and then the thing. So we should have I'll ping you on Telegram or whatever. There's, and then I don't know if since I'm talking, there was one thing I talked to you about, I think a couple months ago at Satoshi.
yeah,
There was another app that was, I think, being built on this, which was for like price oracles for any asset, basically. I forget what the
yeah.
name of the product was. But you could trade any asset as a synthetic. Is that something you covered here? I came in late.
Yeah, no, we've got that. That's another one that's index.fun here.
I don't remember the name of it. Yeah,
And
okay.
yeah, so in here you can open the demo. Yeah, and they're using all the data that's been aggregated and available on the Truth Network, and you can find, sort of deadlift index, where in here, this is together with Peter Levels, who's a big influencer. He launched the deadlift index, which is a simple weighted average of the top 10 companies where the CEOs are doing weightlifting, in the gym. And how has that performed against you can then compare that S&P 500. So you can then see how that performs against that. And you can immediately bet up or down as a prediction market to forecast, will it go up or will it go down? And yeah, that ultimately allows people to participate. If that hits a certain amount of volume, then that goes on to exchanges. So we've been working with Orderly and with Jojo on Base, where this is actually live. So it's on Base where you can do that. But anybody can create one. So you can come in here. I created one here where I've just taken gold futures, which is equities, gold finch, which is, gold futures, which is, commodities, gold finch is token, Goldman Sachs would be equities, and then the other two are crypto assets. So you can then blend that together and call this the Goldman Index or whatever, as gold peaks and its all-time high. And then you can create that and publish that to the chain. And that's what then people do. And you have here the gold, super gold. You have here, Murad's meme coin index, which is a bit more crazy. You have the Elon Musk index. And I think somewhere we have a made in America index. Here you have the made in America index. Yeah. That's
The
so
inverse Kramer.
Stan, I had a question on this, and
yeah,
super interesting in this perspective.
yeah,
So if you look at TIPS, right,
yeah,
which is the treasury, it's a security, and now we have these stablecoin bills, both in Genius Act as well as Stable Act, and there's a few things around it. is this a DeFi product, or because they're tying to stablecoin, and once we have more regulatory clarity, there's a wrapper around it? How do you see that from a regulatory perspective? Would that change your business model?
So this is fully decentralized. It's fully DeFi. Everything's non-custodial. The max cap token holders will vote on the actual allocation of the capital, and for their participation, they get a small reward. We originally, the team had set this up not to geo-blocking the US, but after this new administration's in, and with the Genius Act in place, we have launched this before. They had launched this before end of last year. So I think it might be grandfathered through. And as long as the governance is not centralized, then seems to be looking pretty favorable that this will allow to continue to exist.
Yeah, the only thing is if you're calling it a stablecoin and you're using USDC, which is pegged, then you'll begin to inherit some of those things from the language is such.
Yeah,
you'll have to inherit it at some point. So, okay, thank you.
All right, we have anybody with any other questions?
Yes, another one, sorry. Stefan, and I missed this because I joined 10 minutes late, so please forgive me if I missed the whole thing. So the way tips work, it's guaranteed by US, Treasury. They look into CPI. They have principal adjusted or inflation adjusted principles. They change a few things to be able to provide the returns that the inflation protection provides in terms of, the premium that they give. In this case, your economic model, the tokenomics system in this case is I deposit a USDC. What happens to that USDC once it's in the pool? Does it go through, generally most DeFi protocols are relying on financial primitives, the borrowing, the lending, the collateralization, the liquidity that's needed. And there's a premium for that, and they take a small haircut and provide the rest as a yield. So, so to speak. In this case, you have a lot of data, but is there an economic activity that substantiates the valuation of the inflation protection premium that you're getting from this?
Yeah, so this is, excuse me, this is what happens with the USDC. Basically, 80 cents on the dollar gets allocated into yield-bearing pools. 20% goes into an Aave pool and is ready available. These 80% are accessible and are locked up every week. They get unlocked or relocked and allocated into the various pools to generate the various yields out there. Of that yield, you can see a certain amount is allocated to Nuon holders in the form of inflation. These numbers aren't accurate, but in the form of inflation. And then max cap governance participants earn a percentage of that yield. And then additional yields go to a reserve pool in the back. So the reserve is like tokenized assets that are inflation correlated. So when, like now in DeFi, the yields are down at maybe 3% versus the 16% if you go back 2 months ago. And so because of that, then what happens if inflation is greater than the yield you can get on chain in DeFi protocols? That's then funded out of the reserve pool. And then there's inherently for development work and activity, a certain amount of the yield is allocated to the protocol itself for enhancements, development work, etc.
Got it. No, this is really interesting, and I think you got creative with it, which is great too, because that's the innovation financial product.
Yeah.
Because you're building a liquidity product, and I did actually the last 3 months of pure research in terms of what's happening with the various tokenized liquidity option, whether it's money market funds or US treasuries or stable coins. And they all have different sort of hierarchy of the buffers they have to maintain. General liquidity is under most duress when it's needed the most.
Yeah.
So what happens when there is sort of a bank run or there's withdrawals that need to happen because there's obviously a systemic stress? these buffers that you have created, whether it's going after reserves or is there any one component that can break that the inflation premium that you're offering?
Well, so the inflation premium, not necessarily, because the reserves will always back the inflation premium. And if there is a run, then there's fewer nuance in circulation, and the reserves remain untouched. So the reserves will always act as what we call the backstop to the whole protocol. But otherwise, bear in mind that also in order to get additional yield on Nuon, people stake it. And so if you stake it, you have a 7-day withdrawal period. So you can't just withdraw instantaneously.
Okay.
You would need to wait 7 days.
There's a
Also,
lock-in
the
period,
max cap are also acting as a bit of a backstop. So the capital tied in via max cap. However, I would say that's indigenous, right? Because that's tied to the protocol. So that's a smaller portion of the overall protection that you'll get. But the staked Nuon are going to be the biggest ones.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much, Stefan. Super interesting.
Alan, I have a question. Thank you, Stefan. It's most fascinating. How are you using AI in the business at the moment? What elements? How does it help you?
Yeah, I mean, it helps us quite. I mean, the easiest way you can see AI right now is right here. We have in Truflation, you have AI insights. And you can then just go understand more. And this is all developed in partnership with Perplexity. So you can then go, whoops, token not valid. Okay, so maybe it's still in the works, so we're out of tokens or something. But anyway,
that's the AI token, right? Not the
yeah, it's an AI token, not a crypto token. Yeah, they've just launched this today, so this went out today, and I guess everybody's been shit. I better tell the team. But that's one example. But where we used it most, to be honest, is behind the scenes. So two areas. One is really at the back end where composability and recognition of the data sets, that's been really hard and challenging. And then the normalization of it. So alerting us when it's not accurate or it is accurate or it's outside specific window or within a window. Then all of that was handled by AI, allowing us to streamline and reduce the time needed to integrate data sets into Truflation or the Truth Network. Made that super easy. And what we're doing now going forward is the consumers of the data right now, they pull it via, especially exchanges, via APIs. And what we're trying to do is see how we can deploy that using MCP as a more intelligent API, if you will, so that any change that you do to your API is recognized by the application consuming that API.
I got it. Because I was wondering if you're using it at all to collect the data or to consume the data.
To collect, less on the consumption side right now, and then more on the educate side. So here, this would be in the educate side.
Yeah, got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Here, I need to tell
on the weather side of it, you should talk to Eric Brahman, or Eric, what's his last name? He's specifically been building a lot of artificial intelligence systems that show the true weather data. Eric Bravik, he's also a member of this group, but I'll connect you with him. You guys should have a conversation. If you don't
we'd love that. We work very closely with WeatherXM that have crowdsourced a lot of the weather data. They have weather stations that they provide. I mean, basically, people buy weather stations to earn tokens for contributing weather information based on the quality of the weather reader. They are then either they get the full amount or they get slashed down to certain less amounts if they can't hit the certain thresholds that they have.
Cool. That's amazing. Yeah, I'll make a connection with him. I think that would be an interesting conversation with some of the stuff he's working on.
No, I would love that. I think anything. I mean, what I'm really keen on is how do we how do we capitalize on these data sets, right? So I've got data, I've got weather information. There are a lot of, on the CME, there are weather contracts. So if weather goes below, I don't, goes below, let's say 40 degrees, then buy oil at X price, right? And so that oil conversion, weather correlation to price of oil to weather requirements for heating, etc., triggers out, a whole set of activity, which is actually a really big market. How can we engage in that market? What does that look like? And that's what we're really trying to explore, or I'm spending a lot of my time on trying to explore.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that would pay for more precise data,
sure.
hedge funds, and yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, and then you can break it down also by district, right? So because the weather in certain districts will be different, across a city, across a state, across the country. And so those are things that we're just trying to configure.
Do you run correlations like between your different data to see like what the, I don't know what's it called when they're running together? So across your whole database.
I mean, we correlate. We have what we call primitive data streams and composed data streams, where we then compose, let's say, the price of eggs. I think we just launched the eggflation, where we compose 4 data. Yeah, there you go, eggs index. So here you can see the eggs index. This is composed of 3 composition. Fact sheet's not here. Okay, yeah, we have 3 different data providers for the price of eggs, and then they compose into one. So we check what is the deviation. If the deviation is greater than a certain threshold amongst the prices of eggs, then that gets flagged and gets reviewed. And if the supplier is inaccurate, that supplier is then blacklisted. I don't know if that was the question you were asking.
No, I meant like that you've got all this data. So if you just look to see what correlations there were across all the data, it could be random things like the price of eggs versus oil is running.
Okay. But we haven't done anything like that yet. We've tried to more correlate it to investment opportunities. Everybody in crypto is always looking for an alpha, right? And so that's why we correlated it towards Dixie or oil or gold or Bitcoin or other assets.
Well, you've got an awful lot going on. I'm just kind of wondering, what's your biggest challenge right now trying to move forward? Is it governments? Is it the business itself? Is it collecting data?
I guess the biggest challenge is is scale. Is just how do we scale this? And I mean, right now the Truth Network is the platform that's consuming most of my effort, which is really building out the decentralized database for everybody. And these applications are just coming to shine. This has been 2 years in the development, right? We've been working on talking about an inflation protected stablecoin for so long. And now finally it's coming to a point where the market's ready to adopt it. Historically, it's been the government. It's been really, the previous administration has been so restrictive, so yeah, so negative on anything we could do, that now at least we can sort of get product to market. And I think what you will see is, thanks to this environment, we will now see actually real development and real builders being rewarded over just, yeah, yeah, other assets that are being created across the blockchain space, at least crypto space.
Yeah, sounds
E.g.
like
meme
quite a
coins.
challenge. Quite
Yeah.
a challenge. Yeah. I was just going to make one quick comment. That price that you have for eggs right there is almost exactly what we're paying locally here. So that's a
Oh, there
pretty
you
good
go.
indicator. I mean, that's what it is a dozen in our area, or local Costco.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what really hit home when I think we were coming to market first. People just said, wow, this is much more accurate to what I'm feeling versus to what the government's telling me it should be.
Yeah.
And
You're spot
yeah.
on here. I
And
mean, it's
if you say that
unfortunate.
and we hear that, that's really good and super happy to see and hear.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any other questions. I mean, this
I
is.
just one more just
Oh,
on
go
the
ahead.
eggs. I just because it was so interesting because as soon as the numbers came out and like everyone like if you follow the media and you listen to their talking points, it was like everything eggs that eggs are going skyrocketing and eggs this, eggs that. And it was almost as if like you knew something suspicious was going on because it was like this whole coordinated, it was basically like a whole coordinated narrative about the prices of eggs. So I was wondering, and I think I tweeted this and you guys actually responded, but I was wondering if in January when they were murdering all those chickens, so the price of eggs were going to go
Yeah.
up, if
Yeah.
they did anything to their change their basket, the actual CPI basket to make eggs have a little bit more of a weighting.
Yeah, so what they do a lot in January, and they only announce it in February, is they, over the course of the last 12 months, they announce their changes that they've done to their methodology, right? So all throughout the year, they're probing changes in the weightings of how consumers are spending their income or their monies. And yeah, in February they come out and they explain what they've been changing. And so the January numbers are always distorted. We cannot get that accurate, and we have stopped actually predicting what they do in January because you just can't predict it, because that's when they have to then realign everything and they have to firm up their probing throughout the whole year. So they can change things throughout the year, but in February they announce what they've changed and what they stuck to at the end of January. And so they have to then lock it in for the next 12 months based on that basic outline that they then share with everybody in February. And yeah,
They just change it, like they can't change it in December and announce it like they.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's a question to them. I would put that, but yeah, I mean, I think everybody's sort of fed up with their methodology anyway, to be honest. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
comment on that much, but we tried and we just couldn't get anywhere. So I felt, yeah, that was very frustrating.
Yeah, a lot of that's just a matter of perception that they're trying to control. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's also I mean, it hits the P&L, right? I mean, hits the government. I mean, we see how big interest payments are. And if we have $5.5 trillion worth of inflation protected bonds out there, then those are going to be impacting a lot of businesses. And that's why Argentina wanted us there. They wanted to have an alternative alternative voice saying that inflation really is coming down, or at least Millet did, so that they could have a stronger negotiation with the IMF, who are providing them with the loans that they need to fund, their economy, or now their transition.
Okay, so Truflation was kind of playing the role of, this is the source of truth, basically, of what's really happening.
Yeah, because people, I don't know if you've heard about it, but before we actually came, the head of commerce, which is the department that we're working with, was actually the former head of commerce, was put to jail because he fudged inflation numbers
Hmm.
in order
Oh,
to keep the interest on the IMF loans low.
wow. I mean, looking at those rates, I can see that, any amount of verification and validation is going to be important.
Yeah. But I mean, look, since Millet's come in, look how it's just come down, 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 down. It's come down from a 300% rate down to 50%.
Wow.
So he's done a phenomenal job over there.
Stefan, one more thing. Can I use your quote in an article of obviously, to you, and then I'll point it to Truflation. But where you said about the consumer sentiment relating to how people think, the differentiating between how people think, feel,
Sure.
and what they say.
Of course you can.
And then could I say that Truflation is coming out with a new consumer sentiment metrics based on truth?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff, actually, to get to that point where you're actually pulling in the sentiment itself on a realistic scale, or realistic source.
It's pretty challenging because, I mean, there are also some usage rights associated with the data. Who owns the data, right? If you're a premium subscriber, you're paying for using a service. If you're paying for using the service, does that mean the data is yours, or is it the social media platform that's using it? And they then monetize that data by then on top of it selling it to me, because we have to then subscribe to that data. So data management's been a big problem or challenge for us. And then cost of data, that's also a challenge. On these centralized platforms, it's extremely expensive. They know the value of the data and they sell it to you as, so you don't have the fortunate position of being a government entity that can actually sort of strong arm, give me the data. You have to instead, work with them to capture that data somehow.
Are you looking at ways to collect that on your own instead of going through social media? Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So we're trying to work with sort of more decentralized platforms, crowdsource it. We're working with a number of different partners who do the crowdsourcing and have communities. They're just none of them are as big as a Twitter or as a Facebook or as a Reddit or as, some of the other platforms that are out there.
Mhm.
So it just takes time and some lift to make that possible.
Hey, well, this is always fascinating listening to you go through what has to take place to make all these numbers, come together the way that they do. And we thank you very much for being here. I don't know if you have any last words, or maybe thoughts on what might be helpful that the collective might be able to assist you with.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, it's like, I mean, at the moment, I think we're just heads down building, trying to market. So anything with the marketing, support, investment into Nuon or into index.fund to help them scale. I think those are areas that would be helpful.
Okay. Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Great.
All right.
Thank
Once
you.
again,
And
thank
to
you
get
so
a hold
much.
of you, to get a hold
Yeah,
of you,
it was
Stefan, what's the
amazing.
best
Thank
way to get
you.
a hold of you?
On Telegram's the best way, Matt.
Okay.
Do you
All right,
want
great.
my?
I'll-
I give you
I'll-
my. You have my Telegram, right?
I have your Telegram. I pinged you already. I just well, everyone has their favorite Medium channel.
Yeah, yeah,
so
no, here, yeah, you just here, yeah, here you go.
I'm pinged.
Here,
All right, thanks.
This is me. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Okay,
So
thanks once
much.
again.
Oh, Tom, it's here. Let me just put it in here right now. The real, it's 50 fly spelt out. Yeah, thank you, everybody,
Got it.
and
Thanks.
have a
Okay,
great,
thanks again.
great
Take
weekend.
care.
Bye. Good to see
Bye-bye.
some
Till
faces
next
here.
time.
LV,
Yeah.
Dara, thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.